Hello everyone, this is going to be my third video in my series, Economic Myths and Misnomers, and this video is going to be about how a lot of people seem to think that wealth is almost entirely inherited and that there is no mobility between the different percentiles in income in the United States specifically and in Western countries. The first article that I'm going to talk about is actually a Forbes article where they show more or less that around 60% of all billionaires in the world have made their money. They did not grow up rich and they did not inherit a lot of money from their parents or anything of the sort. They actually go through and they rate each individual billionaire from 1 to 10 what their reliance on their parents or someone else would be, and the one, which is the least reliant on anyone else, has grown significantly since the 90s, which is an interesting fact, but also goes to show that more and more billionaires are actually are self-made and they are inheriting their wealth. Now, a lot of people think that it's possible that even though this is true of billionaires, that just the average millionaire or like top 20 percentile upper middle class or what have you also does not experience this, and that even though this might be true of billionaires because of the superstar effect being that even if someone is only slightly better than someone else, if they are the best of the best, they will earn a significantly higher portion than the people who are only slightly worse than them, because they are in fact the best. And this applies to pretty much anything. It can apply to music, it can apply to investments, it can apply to building buildings, it can apply to pretty much any industry. So this next picture shows the income of people in the United States, their parents, and then their income separated into percentiles, the 5 percentiles to be exact, the bottom 20% and the top 20%, and then the ones in between. And it more or less shows that people who are born in the lowest percentile, the bottom 20%, actually have a higher chance of moving up into above that percentile than they do of staying in it, because it's around a 40% chance of them staying in it and a 60% chance of them being in any of the other percentiles. And the same is true for the upper percentile. You actually have a higher percent chance of, if you're in the upper percentile, of being in a lower percentile than you do of staying in that upper 20% income bracket. And there are many reasons for this. Some of the reasons have to do with just familial upbringing, and people who are in a rich family, the kids, this is not very scientific, but generally tend to be more spoiled and are worse with money than their parents were, and that can certainly have an effect. And another reason why is a more economic reason, is that we have inflation in Western societies. We have around usually between 1 and 3% inflation every year, which basically means you can't just sit on a pile of cash and expect to keep it. Every year inflation goes up 1 to 3% and it compounds. So that's the reason why people talk about prices from 50, 60 years ago being like significantly smaller than they were now. It's because of compounding inflation. And pretty much any investment that you have is not risk-free. Even if you put it in a investment bond or mutual fund or whatever, that is the safest possible return. There's always a chance that the market just completely crashes and you lose more than you would have if you put it in a risky thing and pulled out before the crash. I would also like to note that of the modern Western countries, the United States is actually not one of the most economically mobile in the world, even though we still have a fairly good degree of economic mobility. There are other countries that are better than we are currently, which is sort of an interesting factoid. So really the idea that you inherit most of your wealth really depends on what kind of country you come from, and you don't really, for the most part, inherit most of your wealth. It's just it does trend towards people who are richer tend to stay richer, and people who are poor tend to stay poor. But to say that they're, like, I've seen a lot of people say, like, 99% of all people who are rich inherited their wealth. That's so far from beyond the truth that it's laughable, really. So that's about all for this myth. I'll see you next time.